right, so last time we were talking, we figured out the opportunity cost of wheat and tomatoes in the US and Mexico, and we decided that because of the opportunity cost, if you remember that in the US a pound of tomatoes costs 2 pounds of wheat, and in Mexico 1 pound of tomatoes only costs half a pound of wheat, we decided that the US would be the importer of tomatoes and Mexico would export tomatoes, and likewise the US has the advantage in wheat, so the US will be the exporter of wheat and the Mexicans will import wheat from the US. And then we further discussed the slope of the production possibility frontier, and we decided that that would always be the opportunity cost of the good on the horizontal axis, and the absolute slope. So these two vertical lines that I've drawn around slope, that's just something that mathematicians do to mean absolute, so that we drop the minus sign on the slope. So we've decided that the two countries have an advantage to trade with each other, and we've decided who's going to trade what to whom, but we don't really know what the price is. And the reality is we can't be too specific about price right now because we know about supply conditions in the US and Mexico. We know that the US is very good at making wheat and Mexico is very good at making tomatoes because we can see that from the production possibility frontiers, but we don't know about the demand conditions in the two countries, whether the US is crazy for bread and the Mexicans like nice salads or anything like that. So we have no model for demand conditions right now, and we do introduce that in chapter 4 of your textbook. So bear with me. Whilst we don't know anything about demand conditions, we do know something about supply conditions, and this will enable us to establish something that is referred to as the limits to mutually beneficial trade. And it's pretty easy to see what these are likely to be just by looking at opportunity costs. And we can have a thought experiment where let's say that the Mexicans come to America and say, hi, would you like to buy some tomatoes from us? How about this? We'll give you a pound of tomatoes if you give us 3 wheat. And the Americans are going to go, forget about it, because we have 2 possible ways to get tomatoes. We can buy them from Mexico, or we could make them ourselves. And when we make them ourselves, we give up 2 pounds of wheat to get 1 pound of tomatoes. So we're never going to be interested in a price like 3 wheat for 1 tomatoes. And likewise, if the US went to Mexico and said, Mexico would like to buy tomatoes from you, how about in exchange for a pound of tomatoes, you give us 1/4 pound of wheat? The Mexicans are going to say, forget about it, because if we want wheat, we can make wheat, and every time we sacrifice 1 pound of tomatoes, we get 1/2 pound of wheat, so why would we ever trade with you at a price that was even lower than a half? So this is defined as the limits to mutually beneficial trade. I'm expressing them in terms of tomatoes, but you could easily do this in terms of wheat. That wouldn't be a problem. But the price of tomatoes has to be somewhere between 1/2 a wheat and 2 wheat, or one of these countries would object. So as I said, we don't know about demand conditions. We can't say exactly what the price is, but we can say what it can't be. It can't be smaller than 1/2 a wheat, and it can't be larger than 2 wheat. And we refer to this as the limits to mutually beneficial trade. So in these diagrams, we're just going to pick a feasible world price. And you're probably guessing that I'm going to pick a really easy one. A feasible world price is just a price between 1/2 and 2 wheat. Oh, how about 1? So let's just pick 1. Let's suppose that the price on world markets is established as 1 pound of wheat trades for 1 pound of tomatoes. That's feasible because it lies within these limits. Whether that's what actually happens would depend on demand conditions, which we don't have. But if I say that this is the world price, then I'm essentially assuming that this is the price that balances trade in the sense that the amount of wheat that the Americans wish to sell to Mexico is exactly equal to the amount of wheat that the Mexicans wish to buy